Happy Friday, happy Friday, happy Friday, and welcome to Bold Badass Business, where we bring you the boldest asses in the business world. And today, I mean that in terms of just the physiology. Today we have Tom Briggs, who is a brand strategist. He's an internationally cited social media researcher. He's been an adjunct professor. He's a father, a husband, and a creative, and has worked with many think tanks and incubators. And I want us today just to welcome Tom. This is our starting out proud in the new year and stopping all the fake ass shit. What do you say, Tom?
I get to kick it off. That's a weighty privilege, Dr. Barnsley. I'm glad we
Uh,
can sit down and chat through this. It's one of my favorite topics.
it's a great topic. I love the title. And, I understand that you have a joke for us with our title, the
Oh,
fake ass branding, find
there
your
was
real
there
ass brand.
well,
Brand.
there was so much ass in the title. I felt like I was sitting on, Copacabana in Brazil.
I
There you go.
love it. Either that or the south of France, maybe. But
Yeah,
anyway,
maybe.
yeah, we've got ass all over the title and we might curse a little, those of you who come on. But hey, we're going to have fun and we're going to bring you some great, great strategies that you can implement in your business because I'll tell you what, I was just talking about this with my VA earlier today, Tom. I said, look, my brand is playful. I am playful. I want fun. So we've got these great graphics for our shows. We've got great graphics for an online webinar coming up. And I said, and I want you to bring in funny animals. They need to come into our graphics. So she said, okay. And I said, and I'll caption them. Don't you worry. But truthfully, it's part of my brand. I love animals and I love fun. I love play. I love improv comedy. And to be standing here like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, always looking serious, just is not who I am, Tom. So it's got to be real.
Yeah, and you've tapped into something really profound, and it's an overused word,
Mm,
authenticity, but it doesn't make it
yes.
any less true. So you found things for your personal brand that are meaningful, and there's a power that comes from being able to be the same person in our non 9 to 5 as we are in our 9 to 5, and just that integrity and
Yeah.
being okay with that, owning who you are, owning yourself is profound, and you're living it. So well done. That is, you're effectively killing the fake brand, and you're operating out of your true values, your persona, and just your personality. So good on you.
Well, thanks, Tom. Well, I love in your bio that you talk about values led business because truthfully, if we're not led by our values, what are we led by?
Yeah, and people put a lot of weight on the word values, but fundamentally, if you pull all the fanciness out of it, values are just the things we value. They're the things we devote our time, our talent, our intellect, our treasure to. And the best way to find your values is to, do a retrospective. We just rolled into a new year, so look back at 2023, do a time audit. What did you put your time toward? Because functionally, at the end of the year, at the end of the week, at the end of a life, those are the things that truly matter to you. And owning that, being honest to it is core, is fundamental. It will make you a more integrity filled person in that you'll be who you say you are, and it'll shine through. And that's attractive in the marketplace.
I love that. I am actually putting this over here. Do a time audit because, most people don't ever get really asked the question, what do you really value?
Yeah.
What do you really
Yeah.
value in life? What do you really value in the world? What do you bring that's valuable as well? Most people don't get asked that question. And to actually go back and do a time audit, as you said, is really a powerful idea because we're going to give our time, as you pointed out, time, talent, treasure to the things that we really care about. So, is there a
Yeah.
specific way that you kind of do a time audit, Tom? Is there a way that you think
Well,
about?
it's not. fancy in any way. It's just looking back and yeah, doing it. It varies for different people. Do whatever's comfortable. Some people are as regimented as, okay, I'm going to keep a journal this week. I'm literally going to go by every
Yeah.
15 minutes. Or, there's apps in your phone where you can tell, okay, I was
Yeah.
on this app for this long. So there are various ways. But what is really interesting is when you mix that your values into brand. And brand is a word that we lay a lot on. It's a big bucket, can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's as diverse as a multinational logo down to, if you're a retail operator, someone walking into your store, if you have a web storefront, someone clicking to your website. It's just ensuring, and from my lens, it's just the myriad of ways that your product, your service, and if you're a coach, that may be you, the myriad of ways that that can be experienced, and making sure that that is consistent, coherent, so that such that the experience, if you're a global multinational, the experience someone gets walking into a chain restaurant in Berlin is the same as they'd get
Mhm.
in San Francisco. It's the same they would get in Houston. It's the same they get in New York. So that's where layering in values and brand, you can create this really nice rock solid base from which to operate. And you get a really, brand loves consistency. It loves being seen the same way across every possible touch point. And in a marketplace where we're all encountering more messages, more
Mhm.
information being thrown at our eyeballs than ever before,
Yes.
being consistent is non-negotiable now, and it will help any service provider stand out and get noticed if you're just razor consistent in your manner of speaking, the words you put out, the images associated with you, and the words you choose to communicate.
I love it. I love what you're talking about with the, global brands. And you made me think about this, Tom. You made me think about when I was doing volunteer work years and years ago in a little village called Moli Pololi in Botswana. And my highlight in Moli Pololi after all this work all week was to go, and there wasn't even electricity there. We had to follow like the ruts in the road. There wasn't asphalt, it was a dirt road. And we would
Mhm.
go to the Moli Pololi Hotel, which was all of like 2 rooms and then a bar and a place where people could dance. And I would get, guess what? My Diet Coke. And that was my connection back to
Yeah.
home. That was
Yep.
my way to just tap in to something of, and I was a little homesick, especially when I got a little respiratory infection. I was homesick, but just that connection back and knowing it did taste different, by the way, but knowing that the packaging would be the same, the colors would be the same, the name was the same, the bubbles were the same, mostly the taste was the same. It made it a connection to home.
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
might think about what is what is home, and how do we define that with certain brands, you know, big brands.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're tapping into something really interesting whereby it's mind blowing in a way, but a combination of colors, typefaces, a logo has value. There you can Google right now the top, 10, 100 brands in the world, and they literally have dollar value like on the P&L statement associated with them. And
Wow.
it's that comes out of that consistent performance. So like you said, you buy that bottle of Coca-Cola, it's got that, trademarked color combination, the font. It is a promise. It's a promise of what you can expect with that. It becomes much more than a high fructose corn syrup or sugar mixed with a certain caramel color mixed with, a little bit of water. It's magic. Coke for a long time, Wyden Kennedy, I'm in Portland, Oregon, our hometown, fiercely independent agency had the Coke brand. And just the amount that you can put on it, especially with something like that's functionally a commodity,
Mhm.
storytelling becomes ever more important. So that's where looking at products like coffee, like nutritional supplements, like food items, fundamentally, if at the ingredient level, you may not be able to tell the difference. It's a fraction of a difference between Coke and Pepsi, but the layers of narrative built upon that, you start to see the power of brand and the power of consistency really a brand that knows what it's all about and is able to consistently articulate that across radio, digital display, traditional advertising, every possible way that that can be experienced.
And it's that reason why when people go to Paris, they go to McDonald's. Okay. But they go because it's like, oh my God, when I was in Paris with my daughter last summer, she wanted to go to McDonald's. It was a connection home when she felt homesick. Um, there's a comfort in that consistency that you're pointing out, and that promise, and having that promise delivered
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of consistency most of the time. Though I would argue with you about the taste of Pepsi and Diet Coke, but that's a side, And I'm actually from North Carolina. Pepsi's here, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I can always tell the difference. It's like I can squeeze the Charmin and tell.
Yeah.
So Tom, tell us, you know, what does Epigraph stand for? Your brand?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah, hung out my shingle a few years back, and epigraph. So anyone who's read a lot of books may or may not know, an epigraph is that little bit of text at the beginning of, maybe it's the beginning of the book, the beginning of a chapter, but it might be a famous quote, a citation. But in my mind, an epigraph is a nod to the fact that we humans in 2024 stand on the shoulders of our forefathers, foremothers, all the knowledge that has come before. So how much better off would we be in these tumultuous times where everything feels so stinking new to go back, because it's sometimes hard, we're so infatuated with this present moment. It's a reminder to me, and it's something I bring to the clients I work with, to look back to the past, draw upon those classical lessons, from history. Functionally, we humans, the soft, squishy side of the equation, we have these amazing technologies that are ever evolving, ever accelerating. AI, computing power. I mean, you and I can just sit and have a conversation as if we're face to face in high definition. But the soft, squishy human side of the equation, the way we're functionally wired, our neurobiology, is the same it was, 10,000 years ago. If when my great 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 grandfather was roaming the savannas and he came across an amazing fruit tree, and there's tons of fruit on the ground, he took a bite of that, it would give him or her the same dopamine cascade that it would me if I hopped on Instacart and had 20,000 calories of sweet, salty, sugary food delivered to my front door. It doesn't benefit me to the same degree it would them, because I can very easily get food. He or she might have gone, it might have been a month before they found that many calorie dense foods again. So I found that fascinating. It really came out of, honestly, the pandemic, where I was like, the pandemic was awful. It was really, really gnarly. But if you looked back to things like the Spanish flu and some of the global pandemics we'd had in the past,
The
it put it in
bubonic plague.
perspective. Bubonic plague, we relearned things like masking. Masking came out of the Spanish flu, transferred over, the East Asian countries caught on and carried it. We lost the ability to mask for various reasons, but it came back to our shores, in 2020, and we saw the value of that. So yeah, just drawing upon lessons of the past is the mission of Epigraph. Functionally, we're a communication, brand strategy consultancy, but marketing is so broad. It touches product, it touches promotion. I've had the good fortune in my career to work with companies and scale from, global Fortune 50 all the way to pre-venture stage startups who are, seeking the next round of funding. And what I've come to realize, Dr. Brown, is that the music may be different, but the fundamental dance steps are the same. What you're looking to accomplish in marketing a pre-venture stage startup is very similar to what you are, if you're a global Fortune 50. The dollar values may be a lot bigger if you're looking for global reach, but fundamentally the same challenge of getting noticed in an over-communicated marketplace and tapping into, finding, positioning is fascinating. How do you figure out where you fall into the marketplace so that, you're not fighting over the same customers. You're engaging in true blue ocean strategy where you're a differentiated product offering and you're not going head to head on things like price or value. You're able to claim from the market what you're a good price for what you're offering.
Love that. And yeah, it is a saturated, over communicated market, which means we have got to use every method, every strategy, I would say every bit of who we are to reach those who are our favorite people to work with. And, they really are usually a version of ourselves. Our ideal targets are usually some version of ourselves. And it might be a version from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but there's usually that kind of intersection of experience, skills, education, region, maybe, all sorts of maybe political party, whatever, all sorts of factors that converge. And we find some kind of intersection with those folks. So
Yeah.
would you say, Tom, well, let's see, what can I ask you about that? Now, I know you've worked with a wide range of people, but who are your favorite companies to work with and why?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I came up here in the Portland metro, and there are two ecosystems at play. One of which is Nike. They're 5 miles down the road, and in working with Nike, anytime I've worked with them, I've learned more about brand, really refined brand craft, storytelling, and very, very just it's a deep, deep rabbit hole you can go down with brand. We updated, once their photography guidelines for retail, and it was a binder that thick. And
Well,
because it was just that prescriptive, you're going to choose this type of talent, you're going to photograph them this type of way, you're going to use this type of lighting, you're going to use this treatment after, such that anytime you see, a Nike produced photo, it's going to have that look, that really unique, its brand is often intangible. It's that feeling that it gives you that you just can't quite name, but it's very, very carefully curated and produced to convey that idea. Other ecosystem that's here, Intel, the microchip manufacturer based out of San Jose, their biggest presence in the United States is up here. So I was always a geek growing up. I remember building my first x86 PC with my dad. So they're another company that I've walked with through a good chunk of my career. And it's interesting because their product is always evolving, but it's something, how many of us have actually touched a microchip? It's this thing that's inside so many things we do now. Your toaster, your refrigerator, your computer, your car, functionally, there are more. It's one of the most complex machines ever created by humans, a microprocessor. So really, that scope and scale. The joy of being a consultant and contractor is I get to work with so many different companies, and it's fascinating because I always get to learn. I always get to jump in. I almost went into journalism, but one of the things that I still enjoy is just jumping into a new industry and learning all I can. The first thing I always tell my clients is bury me in information. I want to know the background. I want to know, I'll do my own research, but tell me everything you think you know. And then, coming in as a consultant from the outside, you come in with fresh eyes. And you get to ask, you get the opportunity to ask the dumb questions of, why is that thing that way? Why does it have to be this way? So anyway, long rambling response to your question, but diverse industries. I work best with clients who are disrupting things or, don't quite have a precedent for how they can approach the marketplace. And oftentimes that's what's so powerful in looking back to the past. There may not be precedents. Cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency feels very, very functionally new, but it dates back to some of the innovations that came out of Italy, double ledger accounting, some of the fundamentals of the Medici Bank. Yes, it's a dramatically new evolution that includes the blockchain, includes checks and balances, but functionally, that has roots back in the origins of mutual finance. So things like that. We can always draw inspiration from the past and bring it, and in drawing upon it, acting upon it, pave a better path forward in virtually any industry.
So for the small business owner who's listening to this, as well as the people who may have, medium companies, most of my audience, I would say, are small business owners.
Mm-hmm.
But for the small business owner, how do they take those intangibles that you're talking about and turn them into a tangible? What are some
Yeah.
questions that the small business owner needs to really ask and ask deeply to create a brand that is recognizable so they can be the go-to person in their town or their city or their region?
Yeah. The fundamental challenge in self-evaluating is that it's impossible to read the label when you're inside the bottle. To get outside of yourself and start talking to AAA customers. Who loves you? What are they seeing? Talk to those people who maybe there's a sales pitch or conversation that went sideways. Get honest feedback. Feedback is a gift, and really honestly unpacking and seeing, okay, how are we perceived in this marketplace? What are our strengths? Mapping exercises can be really powerful. If you're in an industry where there are competitors, what factors can you put on the x-axis? What's another variable that you can put on the y-axis?
Mm-hmm.
And where do you fall in relation to your competitors? Is it price? Is it customer service? Be honest. Where are you trying to compete? Are you trying to be the budget offering, or are you trying to be the Birkin bag or the luxury model of your offering space? And then that will give you insight into, okay, if we're like this, the people who are going to resonate most deeply with us are also going to value that. And it just becomes much more resonant. And then you can start really thinking about, okay, who are the other brands that these people trust, and build out, one of the things I really enjoy crafting with my clients is customer personas. See, no one ever got inspired by, we're seeking hiring managers mid-career, so think 35 to 45, they're probably male. Let's name that individual. It's Steve. Steve works at this type of company, and Steve trusts these other brands. And really, that starts to become a really nice shorthand and encourages a business owner to step into the shoes of those prospects and say, okay, these people, if they're reading this type of news, they follow, we're probably going to find them in these spaces, and we're going to be able to use these words to speak to them. And these are the words that are going to perk their ears up and make them say, oh, hey, tell me more about that. So really unpacking that, customer personas can be extremely powerful. And then beyond that, getting input, getting feedback, getting outside perspective on how you're genuinely being received.
Let me pause you for a second, because a lot of
Yes.
people talk about creating your ideal client avatar. How is that different from the customer persona? Or is there
I
a
would
difference?
say they're very similar. Yeah, two names for the same thing. One thing I would challenge, and I think is a really interesting thing. So we form ourselves with the brands with which we associate. So I would
Mhm,
say with those avatars, where are they shopping? What are they driving? Because
mhm.
that's going to really help. That becomes a really nice shorthand. Are they getting a Starbucks in the morning, or are they going to Dunkin' Donuts? Are they a diehard Chevy truck driver, or would they prefer a BMW 7 Series?
Yeah.
What's on their wrist? Are they sporting a Rolex, or are they wearing a Breitling watch? Because it really forces you to think through, and it's a way to build out, there's demographics, which is, age,
Yeah.
gender, and then there's
Those
psychographics. What are
psychographics.
the ways they think? And it really is a way to kind of look into their mind and say, okay, these are the things we value. We've said we value these things as a company. Based upon what we know about our target customers, they value these things as well. And then you can start to kind of say, oh, these puzzle pieces fit. This person would be a good customer. This over here, not so much. This isn't quite working. So, it really starts and gives you an opportunity to filter those prospects and be more focused on those business relationships, those customer relationships that you can say, okay, this is going to work well. How much better to know at day one versus, 3 months down the road where it's going off the rails. You're not speaking the same language as your customer, and it's just not working.
So I like what you're saying, and I appreciate too, the customer persona. I haven't really heard it put that way, and now I'm thinking about it in terms of demographics and psychographics, and I'm really thinking that it's almost like the persona is more internal, it's more the psychographics, and the ideal client avatar is could be perceived as more external. Where do they go? Where do they hang out? What do they wear?
Yeah.
Just an idea. Hey, this would be a
Yeah.
good
Yeah. A
article.
great way to
What's
look
the
at it.
difference?
Hmm.
Because when you're talking about like naming them Steve or Stevie, if it's a woman,
Yeah.
Stevie Nicks, naming that persona, it gives it an individuality that
Yes.
it comes from, and a personality,
Yeah.
that is not really always there in the ideal client avatar, right? The
Hmm.
ideal client
Yeah.
avatar, the way most people write that is pretty broad. I mean, it's, I work with women 30s and 40s who are struggling in their business, blah, 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 and they want to make a positive, it doesn't have the level of specificity and necessarily have the psychographics that a persona could have. So that's just interesting to think about, I think, in and of itself. And for everybody listening, who is that person that you imagine when you are creating a piece of marketing material? Who are you imagining that this is going to? And that's
Yeah.
that customer pursuit persona, ideal client avatar. Who is it going to? And I think what most small business owners do is we are way too broad about what we
Yeah.
envision.
I wouldn't be, yeah, do not be afraid to thin slice those personas. If you're sort of feeling split between a couple different, like break that into two, and really
Yeah.
get clear. And the more clearly you define what that persona is and what you can start adapting your messaging and say, okay, we're trying to reach, a Steve versus a Stevie. How do we vary up that message? What resonates with Stevie versus Steve? And then you get really finely nuanced in your manner of speaking, the way you're pitching, your offering, and you can get really, really granular and dial it in.
You made me think of something else too, Tom, when you were talking about what
Yeah.
brands do we associate with. We are who we associate with, and the same thing is true in terms of brands. So you and I now are going to be associated forever on the internet,
Yeah.
for better or
Yeah.
for worse. Tom, I better keep my mouth clean
Much
on here.
better. Absolutely
Yeah,
better, Dr.
hopefully
Dr.
much better.
Bramsley. All
Two
better. All better.
renegades, two renegades, right? And I called you a renegade in the description, by the way. I hope
Oh,
that's right.
man.
Yeah,
All
just
right.
like
I
you're a
like it.
renegade. I think you're a
Man.
renegade.
Bad boy.
But we're
Thank
going
you.
to be associated, and it's interesting because when people talk about finding your joint venture partners, they don't necessarily think about it in terms of brands that are coherent or congruent, or that's not the word or that could be very, or that are very deeply resonant with each other.
It becomes a nice filter you can apply to, yeah, which fellow travelers, which
Yeah.
collaborators you're seeking out.
Who
Brand
you
is as much a
hire.
story. Exactly. Yeah, you were going exactly where I was thinking. Your brand is as much something you broadcast out as a story you tell internally. So yeah, if it
Hmm.
becomes a rallying point. So if you're hiring, if you're looking to, drive deeper employee engagement, how much better, especially with the up and coming generations. They want to have a meaning, purpose when they come to work. It starts to craft that, so you become more like, yeah, you have a bigger story to tell. When I'm mentoring early stage founders, who, startups are like baby sea turtle eggs. One in 10,000 of those is going to go on and be acquired or go public or whatever. So if, I always tell founders, if you can articulate those core foundational values, and it's not just about, cashing a big 7, 8 figure paycheck and going on some really rad vacations in the Mediterranean. If you genuinely want to give the world a gift, put your positive dent in the universe, a la Steve Jobs, it starts to pull a lot in your favor. People will be like, "Oh, you're not just about making a buck. You want to leave this spinning ball of rock a little bit better place and form a better, give a contribution to humanity."
A legacy.
I want to be part of that. Like, yes, I will sign up for that. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a legacy. It's the difference between just living, kind of consumeristically or living a legacy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think so many of us who come into our businesses, I'm a solopreneur. I do have my tax guy, I have my virtual assistant, I have
Yeah.
my team, but I'm really essentially a solopreneur. And when we come into this, it's like the business is me. I am the business. And who I am
Yeah.
is just to take that out of this business would just destroy it.
Yeah.
Um, and it can create, I, if we think about this, it can create a difficulty for solopreneurs too, Tom, because when we receive rejection, it's almost like, oh my God, I've just been rejected, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
person didn't want to enroll in my program. Oh my God, that just hits me. Whereas it's like the multinational companies, there are so many layers there of responsibility, if you will, for the brand, that it's not this direct A to B back to the person who, originated it.
Yeah.
Um, just thinking about the differences here, how do you see that play out in your work with people?
Well,
Do you find
yeah.
that solopreneurs are a little bit more, or the smaller companies, so to speak, are a little bit more resistant to changing, or are they more open?
I mean, it's
Or can we even
interesting
generalize?
if you get clear about, values, it becomes less about, well, they didn't like me and more about, well, maybe it just wasn't a proper values fit.
They
And
didn't
that
like the
feels,
fact that I love animals.
yeah, that feels
They're
to
a
me a
puppy
little.
killer.
That exactly. That feels a little bit better to me because it's
Okay.
less, it's less about judgment or verdict on us and more on the position we've decided to stake out in the marketplace,
All
and
right,
that
y'all. I want
feels
you to listen, everybody. Did you just get that? Don't take it when somebody says no to you as a rejection of you. It's just maybe a rejection of your position, of your values. And you want to stand for something, right? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. We've heard that before. Yeah.
yeah. And then the pushback, so the rejoinder that always naturally follows this is, okay, do I need to be a Nike? Do I need to be a Patagonia? And take a position. In this day and age, we all got to take our positions. And my response to that is, if it feels natural, if it feels part and parcel of who you are,
Mm.
yes. But you know what? Not having an opinion is also just as acceptable. Maybe this world would be a little bit of a better place if we found a nice middle. And there are brands out there that want to be acceptable to everybody. Procter and Gamble. Things that
Yeah.
we all use, travel. There are these
Yeah.
common spaces. So this is where the soul searching comes in, and figure out what does our organization stand for. Would it be authentic? Would it behoove us? Is it natural for us to put in a certain position ourselves in a certain way, but also recognizing that not having an opinion is absolutely fine. Saying we are going to be amazing for whoever we come in contact with, and the only people we don't want to work with are jerks who are, come in and are jerks to everybody. So yeah, that's that. I would put that caveat.
But that can be a death knell in small business, because I think about, okay, I'm going to make this really concrete, right?
Yeah.
Um, the people who come in who do skincare and they're like, yeah, I work with anybody who has skin. And you think, this is not working for me. It would be a lot easier for me to refer someone to someone who says, I work with men and women who have lost their hair and are going through cancer treatment and feel like they are ugly
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
want to have their self-esteem improved and their confidence
And
restored.
and now you're tapping into the bigger storytelling of, it's
Yeah.
not just improving skin, it's getting confidence back. It's
It's
returning you to
feeling good in their
life.
skin,
It's
right?
feeling, it's growing. Yeah, it's growing who you are as a person, and you start to, we all know Maslow's hierarchies of needs.
Yes.
You're going further up the hierarchy into tapping into self-actualization, helping that person to be a better human, a better partner, a better father or mother, a better auntie, a better niece. Take your pick, but you're calling them. We love brands who call us to the higher angels of our nature, and call upon us to, hey, what if, paint for us a world. There's an interesting, so you think back to, 2010, the Citizens United decision, that basically said, okay, corporations are people, they can, they can walk and talk. So, 10,
Yep.
13, 14 years on, we have reached a state where, we said corporations are people, they're going to naturally walk and talk. And we live in a current cultural moment where there's a desire for a larger, more grandiose vision. Like what can we achieve as a human collective? What is our purpose here on this earth? So you're seeing some brands step into that and suggest ways of being, and yeah, and it's
Zappos
all
is
manner across the
fine.
scale, and it's fascinating. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's creating a more of a dialogue than we've seen. This is different. There's no precedent for this. This isn't the way it was back in the, we're hitting, this is uncharted territory in terms of advertising, communications, marketing. And it's fascinating. That's what I love about being a brand. It's such a dynamic space. There's so much going on here.
It's like it's the difference between investing just for the good of the person investing and socially conscious investing. It's
Yeah.
it's it's kind of like that. But I think about Zappos, for instance, and their
Yeah. Yeah.
donation of shoes,
Yeah.
and some of the other brands that are just every bit of what comes in is being. I just bought those little frosty things from Wendy's, right? And
Yeah.
I buy them for a bunch of people and give them out because they support adoption. Uh,
Yeah. Zappos is a brand I point to in a lot of ways because they're really fascinating. I mean, if you look at the example of a brand that from day one, storefront one, all the way
yeah,
up to acquisition by Amazon, they just had this clear mission, and it wasn't retail, it was delivering happiness. They were
mhm,
on a mission to deliver happiness, and they put legs on that. They said to their customer service reps, "Hey, up to a reasonable amount, make the customer happy." So they had people who, called up the customer service line and ordered pizza. And they authorized their customer service reps to deliver pizza to that person's house because that is part and parcel of our
that's fun.
mission of delivering happiness. Tony Hsieh's end was very unfortunate. He had his personal demons that caught up with him. He had people in his orbit who, maybe, probably didn't have his best interests in mind. So cautionary tale. All that to say, though, you see the power of a compelling narrative. I just reread Simon Sinek's book, Infinite Game. The power
Yeah.
of an infinite game, not just chasing the next quarter's profits and bottom line, but what is an aspirational thing that will keep us, that we can just continually keep chasing after? It's like chasing a rainbow. The closer you get to it,
Yes.
the further it moves away, and you want to, and people want to come and they want to, gather around you because you're playing this really fun, endless game together, that in the end benefits us all. That is fascinating.
I love that metaphor. I really love that metaphor that we're chasing a rainbow and we never do find the pot of gold, right? There is no static pot of gold. It's always moving, it's always evolving. And you said you had another metaphor earlier, Tom, that I liked, and
Oh,
that was the turtles, right? That when you talk to founders, it's like these little turtles. And we have a lot of turtles in North Carolina and Cure Beach, right?
mm-hmm.
And the turtles get destroyed by the lights, right? They go away from the water and go to the lights of the hotels, et cetera, which Cure Beach has lights out at a certain time. And it's also not very developed, thankfully. So the
Yeah,
turtles can live. Well, what are the lights? What are the lights for business owners that take us away from
yeah,
our essential narrative, from that water that
yeah.
keeps us afloat as a business, if we're going to keep that metaphor going? What are the lights that will
Oh, the
draw us?
lights that draw us away. I mean, it's hard to be a business owner we live in the age of distractibility, right? I mean, none
Mhm.
of us is immune. We have these,
What? What'd you
super
just say?
super
Oh wait,
exactly.
I need to go check my cell phone.
Yeah, no, we have these supercomputing devices in our pockets that,
Yes.
if we let them, if we let the default stay on, are going to pop up notifications every
Yeah.
30 seconds. So, establishing that deep thought, and those deep, in general, just, and this is something I've thought a lot about, deepening my thinking,
Mm,
deepening my relationships, moving beyond that superficial, it seems like it'd be a really good, useful
mm.
component. So, finding that humanity, my tagline for Epigraph is more human brands, because I think we do need
Mm.
to return, especially in this age where AI is so shiny and automation is so darn
Yes.
appealing. It feels like, there's going to be a pushback, or at least there should be, where what does it look like to sit eyeball to eyeball again? It's almost, what do we lose when it's all done through an app, or it's all automated and you don't even have to look at the human who brings you your Instacart delivery, or brings you your meal on Grubhub. So I think there's this need, at least, I don't know. I don't know if you're feeling it. I know I am. I want to be in more human spaces, especially after craziness
Voila.
of like the last couple of years where, through the camera was the only way we could do
We
it.
were
And couldn't even
isolated.
be in rooms together. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just, we humans are social, functionally, fundamentally. Like, it's just, we do well when we can see and touch and
Yeah.
smell and be in a room with each other. It
We're
just
kinesthetic
benefits us.
beings. I mean, it's a part of who we are, and some of
Yeah,
us are more kinesthetic than others. I
yeah.
recently started going back to my spiritual community and in
Mm,
person. And I have
mm,
really
hmm.
fallen off of just even looking on Zoom, watching on Zoom. And I
Yeah.
have enjoyed the energy so much.
Mm,
And over
hmm.
the holidays, I recently went to more parties and dinner
Yeah.
gatherings and so forth that had not happened. And we have gotten, I think, as a society and even as business owners, as business owners too, we have gotten accustomed to isolation, a kind of isolation, physical
Yeah.
isolation, which, as you point out, is also a sensory isolation from
Yeah.
other people. It's proven, if we want to talk about dopamine hits, that we need to be around other people. We need to be patted on. We need to hug people. We need to, like,
Yeah.
be around people and
Yeah.
animals,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. Yep. No, well
And
said.
so when we're living like we're in a vacuum, which was COVID, I mean, it kind of all of us in a bubble makes me think
Yeah.
of the Grey's Anatomy, right? Those where they have people in bubbles, these plastic things. This is kind of what we've got to break through now. And we have, there's anxiety around that. That's the other
Mm,
thing is there's anxiety for people around going back out. There's huge anxiety
yeah.
and being in physical spaces with people. And this is, you know, I think you point out the point about going back to history. I don't think we can live in a vacuum like this. I don't think we can exist like this.
I don't
It's
think so. No.
no,
I
I
mean,
don't think
we
we can
can
keep
get some
on.
really amazing, we can get some amazing experiences. VR is fascinating, but, there's just something around, yeah, being around others that it just deepens. It fills in, something in us all that we just need.
And I just did an interview that was quite interesting with Laura Templeton on how artificial intelligence isn't artificial at all, really. We were
Mm.
talking about how humans have to essentially drive this. We have to train it. We have
Mm.
to drive it. We are the masters, not AI. And this again is just like, it doesn't matter what our strategy is if the message, if the deep message, the deep thought, the deep values are not there, then
Yeah. Yeah.
it,
I mean, the
you know,
comfort, AI is fascinating. The comfort I take as a creator is AI, at least as it stands in this day and age, is generative. And that just
mhm,
means it's drawing on very large but established data.
yeah,
So the thing that AI is at this point still unable to do is make those really interesting cognitive leaps that
yeah,
humans, the Greeks called it like, the wind from on high. Like, where did that idea come from? We literally don't know. There's just these weird sparks of innovation that, they're not generative. They are just ex nihilo. They literally come from nowhere. And it's just, neurons, some weird neurons in the back of your head fire, and you're like, wow, I could put this adhesive on this paper and I have a post-it note.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, just yeah, you can't. So in a large part of me, like I love AI as a really good virtual assistant.
Yeah.
In terms of developing original, I don't know, original thought and novel things, I
Yeah.
still see, back to the tagline, more human brands. I still see a lot. We humans have a good long future ahead of us. Yeah,
Yeah, we've got to use it as you say, to work with what we've already created, the ideas we've already thought up that are interesting and different, are fascinating even. Then we can use AI to
yeah,
articulate it, to organize it even, but it's not gonna really create it. It's for us. It's not, thankfully. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you know, so this is really, I think, a really thoughtful discussion, Tom, that people can ask themselves, what is really the rainbow I'm chasing? What is the rainbow I'm chasing, and what are the lights that are luring me away from my mission or my calling, or that great rainbow, that thing that drives me? Whether it's, for me, one of the greatest things that drives me is that every voice matters.
Mm,
Every
mm,
voice matters. I don't care
yeah.
the color. I don't care the gender. I don't care the gender identification. Every
Mm,
person's voice matters. Every person matters. And that is something that is just fundamental to who I am on the planet and to my business. And so when we understand something like that, it's so easy to peel away what is not that. And
mhm,
what is
mhm.
not that is
Yeah.
bureaucratic bullshit for me. The academy, and I've had some discussions about academia, you know, that was not a place where every voice mattered, just in the nature of the canon. Some things were out and some things were in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
understanding what we stand for and why, and then being able to convey that in a tangible form so other people can get it, is important. And I guess as you were talking, I was thinking about brands of politicians, and maybe we shouldn't go there. However, there are brands that I think are extremely dangerous. Let's think about the swastika, wait, which was originally a spiritual symbol, by the way, but
Yeah.
was taken by the Nazis and turned into, um, you know, the ascension of the white race, the Caucasian race. So, what about that? What about when a brand goes south, so to speak?
I mean, yeah, there are symbols. So symbols, there's a whole study of symbol theory called semiotics, that is
Right. I
just
studied that in graduate school. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So
Semiotics.
you
Yep.
see how, I mean, lines and colors have no meaning on their own. We
Exactly.
humans impress meaning upon them. And there are, yeah, no, it's a deep, fraught area. I think, when brands do go off the rails, what is, do you rebrand? Do you rehab? Yeah, it's interesting. So done properly, a brand is a long term, you're building this up over time. This is thousands of hours, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of interactions. So leaving a brand behind or doing an update it's a little bit like the nuclear option. It's an option of last resort unless strategically it coincides with a significant departure. So, Airbnb, their rebranding, it was very significant, but it coincided with this evolution in who they were as an organization. So I'm pitching a rebrand right now, and I'm walking the client through it, and it's like this is going to be a moment where it's an established company, but we're really going to dive in. We're going to figure out where have you been because your brand encapsulates your history. It's
Mhm.
it's part of you. It just is. And then looking ahead to the future, who do we want to be? What do we aspire to? And then when you get to things like colors and fonts, that's what a really practiced commercial, identity designer can step in and help you do. And there's a rhyme or reason to it, and it becomes more natural. I did a rebrand for a technology provider back in, gosh, this must have been 2007 or 2008. They're in upstate Syracuse, New York. I always remember we went in and presented our new logo, and central to this logo was this deep royal purple color.
Hmm.
And I always remember presenting it to this, boardroom of white men in suits and middle aged. And the CEO kind of raises his eyebrow and says, "Really? Purple?" But we were able to show the color study and say, okay,
Okay.
in your industry, there's, companies that have red and blue and green. No one else has claimed this space. So
Hmm.
if you go to your next trade show, if you advertise in your next trade publication, and you use this as a central part of who you are, you will
Mhm.
stand out. You will be visually differentiated, and that will create space for you to speak to your product offering, which is different, and your service offering, which is different. And to their credit, they went with it. They saw the rationale behind it. And I took that as a
Because you
key
showed them
lesson
the data.
of
Yeah.
exactly. And that's where, good marketing is art and science. You have to
Yes.
back it up. If I ever have a client say, "Well, I don't like that color," or "I don't like that font," I'm like, "Well, I haven't done my work in showing, where this came from, showing, okay, you're in financial services, you want to be seen as steadfast. I'm not going to be including reds and sharp angles
Orange.
because
Yeah.
orange, yeah, you're going to be, it's going to be calm, cooler blues and
Gray.
greens. And the pictures we choose are going to convey stability, grandparents hugging the grandkids and, just this aura of
Yes.
confidence.
So
Yeah.
let me say something. I have to say this before we wrap. And that
Yes.
is okay. I had a big discussion with one of my first VAs because she would
Mm.
always send me stuff with white women in it. And I said, look, you got to stop sending me these graphics with white women. I realize that I look like a
Mm.
white woman. We're all mixed, by the way, but I look like a white woman. I want a diversity, not just in terms of color, perceived nationality, but
Mm.
age. And I
Yeah.
also want there to be some men in there too. But if it's like my Facebook community, it has got to be diverse. And you know what? In my meetups and everything, the visuals always are about everyone matters. And I am very excited to say that I have more women of color than I do others in my communities. And that makes me super excited because that's what I stand for. All right.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
I want everyone on here to think about that. Think about what are you revealing in terms of your quote unquote diversity in what you include in your ads. Maybe you only include white males. Maybe you only include people of a certain age. Maybe you
Mm.
only include, you know, a certain age of women and they're white. I want you to think about that because you're leaving money. Here's the economic thing you're leaving money on the table. But besides that, you're sending a message to all of those communities that they are not represented. And this is unacceptable. So, Tom, what would you say about that? I know that's a whole other interview right there, right?
I mean, speaking as someone in the dominant majority, in the U.S., it's so good to remind ourselves because we are such a cultural center in the States that we're speaking right now. This can be seen anywhere around the world, and just I know every time I've moved into spaces that are outside of my gender, culture, racial lane, I have learned so much. Like it is just so good and broadening to engage with humans who don't look like us, don't speak like
Mhm.
us, travel, broadening our perspectives. Oh man, I mean, there's just so much. I mean, anyone who just says, no, I'm going to stick to people who look like me, believe like me, you're just closing off so much of the world. That just seems so bland and uninteresting. And oh man, I love, yeah, no, you touched upon one of my core passions, and it's just crossing borders. I mentor at ADP List, which is a global network of mentors. And it's just young people up and coming around the world.
Yeah,
This year in 2024, India is going to surpass China in terms of the number of youth coming into the marketplace.
love it.
I love chatting. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with startups out of India, and it's fascinating. Our world is so big, and to get outside of our culture, I mean, it makes you more versatile. It makes you a better businessman,
But
and
make
it takes
sure
money.
that your brand isn't just about someone who looks
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
And it's something that I just see, it's a mistake I see all the time. in
Mm-hmm.
people's brands, in their marketing materials.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just prevalent. And so be conscious of that, everyone. Be conscious of that. It's kind of like when I went in to teach an American literature class. Love this, Tom, and I know we have to wrap, but I said, how many Americas are there? That was the first day of class. And my students just looked at me, and these were smart students, and they couldn't tell me. And I said, well, let's think, okay, where are we? We're in North America, right? And there's also Mexico and Canada, right? And then what's down lower? South America. And then what's in the middle? Central America. But they couldn't answer that question. What an incredibly hegemonic way we have created what was perceived as American literature. I said, this is not American literature. This is North American literature minus Mexico, and we got started there. But that's the same thing that I see in marketing, is that, really be aware, and be aware in terms of your languages. For instance, all the big brands are now multilingual. They're bilingual, at least Spanish and English. There's a reason for that in the United States. By 2050, we're going to have more Spanish speakers than English speakers, apparently. Yeah. So I think these are also important considerations. A brand is also at some level very political. It's a political thing. It's a political act. It's maybe I shouldn't use that word political, but socio-political, because we're making a statement about who's important and who's not in our brands as well. I don't know. Tom, I got all.
Yeah, I mean, humans are fundamentally, we're tribal. We are tribal creatures. So we have our people with whom we like to associate, and like attracts like. So yeah, but that said, we can, we are infinitely pliable, and we can, evolve, we can adapt to beyond our natural defaults, and, maybe the ways that, history has steered us in the past, maybe we devote a little, our brain is an energy conservation machine, right? That's what stereotyping is. It's like, okay, we like nice, clean boxes. And if we have someone who doesn't quite fit into a box, we have to burn more glycogen to figure out, okay, I got to make either a new space or, that nuance, embracing that nuance. And I know for me, especially going into 2024, I want to find that middle space and be more, be less willing to write people off, more willing to just hear different perspectives and conversations. And take, just be willing to engage and not shut down, and just, it's easy to like shut the door and go to our corners and just, enter the echo chamber, but it's no way to live. It's no way to live.
It's no way to live. And it's certainly, if we want to have a business that touches a number of groups, we get to develop that global pliability, that global perspective, that global maybe not perspective, because it's not one perspective, but that global awareness. Anyway, I love this discussion. Okay, so we got to wrap. But Tom, you have given us so much to think about. And those of you who are just coming on, make sure you go back and listen to the beginning, and don't be a lurker. You hear me say that all the time. Do you know, I just had somebody admit to me that she's a lurker. She told me in person, oh, I'm one of your lurkers, by the way. I said, well, I know you're there, so I want you to make some comments, right? Even make a comment about what a stupid comment if you want. I don't care. Just react. Say something.
Even just a thumbs up. Give us an emoji thumbs up to let know.
Yes, right there.
Living and breathing.
Share a story. Just make some comments, because we really, everyone who comes on here is giving their time, and we want to bring these perspectives and have them go wide to be shared, right? And so that they can stimulate you, and you find new ideas for your business. And the new ideas may come out of saying, well, I really don't like their ideas at all. So whatever, but just to challenge you a little bit in the way that you're doing things in bold, badass business. So Tom, do you have a gift you'd like to give everybody? Do you have some kind of gift they can get at your website? Because we are creating a vault, which is very exciting, where people will be able to go and get the gifts of all the guests who've been on here for the last year. How cool is that? I love it. Yeah. And if you don't know what it is, don't worry, you can tell me later. But do you have something you want to give people?
My immediate gift is my presence. So I am a longtime LinkedIn power user. I love it. Some people are like, I'm going to limit my network. I reach out to everyone. So I promise, anyone who, reaches out with a connect on LinkedIn, I will make an introduction to my network. Let's connect. My only gate is that you're committed to, being a decent human. Let's leave this place better than we found it. I love
No
having
puppy
just
killers.
no. Yes, I love having no agenda conversations and just hearing
Yeah.
more about backgrounds. It's how you and I came across each other, Dr. Barnsley. We were in networking spaces together, found through mutual friends. But yeah, reach out to me. I'd be happy to if there's someone I'm connected to. Can't guarantee I've sat down and had coffee with them, but schedule a conversation. I wanna sit down, chat. I want to hear. I cherish perspectives. I love having the opportunity to sit down, have a conversation, look through someone else's eyes. Oh my gosh, I mean that is awesome. So yeah, reach
Excited.
out, say
I
hi.
love that. So reach out to Tom Briggs on LinkedIn, you all, and connect with him.
I'm the one
And
in Portland, Oregon.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Portland, Oregon. Yes, what a cool place. And you can go to my website, of course, and grab your copy of How to Overcome Overwhelm in 7 Easy Steps. It's at spirited dash, make sure you put a dash or you will get a boring computer company, spirited-solutions.com. All right. And also, you all, those of you who go there are going to find out about a complimentary webinar online workshop, really, because it's interactive and it's a networking party and seminar that's happening periodically. I've got one coming up on January 25th, 2024. So go grab your copy of the ebook and you'll also be getting a message about that and you can join. Well, Tom, you have given us so much to think about. And in terms of our branding, so much to contemplate. I love the idea of just having time for deep thought and creation. This is something I'm really wanting this new year, time for contemplation and creation in my business and my life. So I love that. And I would encourage everybody here to take some time and do that time audit, do that values audit that we talked about at the beginning, and to ask yourself, what is really important to me in my life, in my business? What am I here to give to the world? What am I here to chase? What rainbow am I chasing and why? And you may not be feeling like a a badass right now, you all. Sometimes we don't in business. Sometimes we feel a little weak and like we're imposters. Well, that's normal. All right. So just get the fuck up and create something because you are a badass or you wouldn't be listening to this show. Right, Tom? You know,
Exactly, exactly.
you wouldn't be here on a Friday afternoon. And thank you again, Tom. Any last words you'd like to give us?
Oh, thanks for giving me the space, Dr. Barnsley. If anyone wants to find me on the internets, hello epigraph, HELLOEPIGRAPH.com. You can find all the socials, links, and more about us. And reach out, say hi. Love to connect.
Fabulous. So see you next week, everybody, on Bold Badass Business, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific, every Friday. Don't miss an episode. We have some incredible guests coming up.